Well, welcome to, this is the Yamaha booth. I'm here with Avery Burdett. This is the 40 years of synthesizers.
Right.
Which is this year, right?
40th anniversary of Yamaha synthesizers.
And you've got a selection of beautiful old ladies here.
Yes.
Starting in 1975 with the SY2.
You know, this is an SY1, you know, the first synthesizer, which was actually developed as part of one of the Electone organ series, you know, the GX series, as the solo keyboard, the third keyboard in a three-manual organ. It was made a standalone synthesizer. This is the SY2, which is an SY1 plus a few envelope and filter parameters in a road case.
Did it have aftertouch?
Yes, it actually has velocity, sensitivity, and aftertouch. And the aftertouch is done very interestingly with a wooden dowel connected to a potentiometer that when you push it down, the dowel activates the potentiometer to send that signal as aftertouch.
Awesome.
So, I mean, that was the first Yamaha synth which was both velocity and aftertouch sensitive. And, you know, many years later, some of the other companies, even Yamaha, made non-velocity sensitive keyboards. But this is where we started. So, and then the next one in our lineup here is the CS15 from '78, a nice monophonic synthesizer. A nice monophonic synthesizer, and you know, kind of stylistically defining how our monophonic synthesizers went.
I have one of these.
You do?
I love it, yeah.
Yes.
You can play it duophonically because you've got external CV with each oscillator.
Exactly, and it becomes duophonic.
Yeah.
Right. Each oscillator being its own voice. We're moving up to the CS30 here, which is unique in a number of ways, as you can see the layout. But right here we have an 8-step analog type sequencer. And so we want to listen to some of the parameters. You know, we've got resonance and cutoff, and
it's a really interesting shape because you've got parallel filters in this, haven't you? So you can.
Right.
And it's interesting that even on the CS15, you can get that classic Vangelis brass emulation on these guys.
Right.
It's sort of common throughout the filters weren't hugely resonant, but they had a lot of character, I remember.
Yes, and you know, that along with the oscillators, you know, give it a really unique character, and also the programmability is pretty unique. So if we take this and we switch control of the oscillators to the sequencer,
old school unquantized CVs. And 3 envelopes on this guy as well, which is kind of quite a big deal at the time.
Right, EG1, EG2, and EG3 right here.
This is still considered to be almost the holy grail of analog poly, isn't it? I mean, it's got something about it.
You know, it was traditionally kind of known as Japan's first great analog synthesizer. And it, you know, with 8-note polyphony, polyphonic aftertouch, wooden keys, you know, and you just don't see things like this anymore.
Wow.
Okay, each one of these cards is an oscillator, and so you have, and this whole rack raises up so you can get to it and tune each voice in each oscillator.
Jeez, I've never seen inside one before that.
And look at these keys. You know, the polyphonic aftertouch, and you know, it's just a marvel of technology. It really is.
And it had programmability in it. I mean, this is the underside of the programmable panel. If you flip it up, if we flip back the other way, I'll just take a look in there. Oh, which way does it go? Sorry. Yeah.
Each one of these rows of sliders is this. You know, it's a miniature replication of the front panel.
That's right.
And you get 4 presets, unheard of at the time.
Yeah. And the memory buttons are here.
This is 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and you've got two sets of oscillators. So, you know, each note of polyphony can have 2 oscillators and 2.
And of course, the ribbon controller is a very unique thing for the time as well, isn't it?
I think this was the first one for that. It has built-in effects, a tremolo and a chorus with speed and depth. And it's interesting because all of the preset voices here, you know, these are the panel voices, and this activates this panel, this activates this panel.
It's got a sort of 1970s space console effect.
Yes.
Feeling to it.
You know, it has an Electone heritage. You know, the GX1, the Wonder Machine. You know, John Paul Jones. You know, and Stevie Wonder, of course. The GX1 was basically 3 of these CS80s in a big console, huge console.
We don't have that one here, unfortunately.
No, we don't. It was so just a bear to move, and we don't have one that works.
It must have been very difficult to find all of these. Are these all Yamaha kind of heritage stock? These all
No, basically these are borrowed from their owners.
Right.
You know, I was able to, you know, through the years make contacts with all these people, and they were kind enough to loan us.
So look at that, original price in 1977. It's a bargain nowadays, isn't it?
Yes.
You wouldn't get one for that price now.
No, I've seen them on eBay for double that, easily 14,000, you know, something like that. So, yeah, it's quite the beast. This row of controls operates on the presets.
Ah, okay. So
and the panel voices as well. So if you get the here we go. You know that classic.
It's a very commanding sound, isn't it, the CSA? It really does have a lot to offer. Oh, you're not probably going to pick that up, but that that shook the floor.
Right.
So where do we go to next?
Well, I think we've been through the analog section, and next we're going to digital. And with the digital, this is going to be our
wow,
our first
beautiful.
Our first FM digital synthesizer. The GS1 came out in 1981. Of course, with the cabinetry and everything, it was very expensive. It's an 8-operator FM system with 1 algorithm, which is 4 pairs of modulator carrier in parallel.
Right.
So 2, 4, 6, 8 operators in the FM system.
I'm glad you sound like you know what you're talking about there, because I never understood the way FM works. That's the one thing about it, is that there was always a disparity between the power and the GUI, effectively, of FM synthesis. That kind of I just could never that divide.
You know, can I give you a little brief just a very brief description of the basic character of FM synthesis? And I had the good fortune of my first day at Yamaha on the job. I flew to Chicago and went to the FM seminar, and I had breakfast with Dr. John Chowning, the inventor of FM. But in a nutshell, you know, these what we call operators are basically digital oscillators, and they're configured in algorithms which define their function as either a modulator or a carrier.
Right.
And if you have a modulator and a carrier at the same frequency, the output of the modulator affects the carrier by creating sidebands, frequency modulation, which adds harmonics to the sound. If you double the frequency of the modulator to the carrier, you get a square wave.
Right, okay.
Right? And as you increase the output of the modulator, it varies the width of the square wave. You know, it doesn't pulse width modulate, but it adjusts the sidebands and the harmonic content of the square wave. And that's just basically how it works. Then you add things like feedback loop or another modulator on top of a modulator to a carrier.
That's where I get lost.
Well, you know, then it's just a matter of you know, experimenting to figure out what sidebands are created by how much modulation index that you're putting on the carriers. And you know, so we had all these brains that had been programming DX7s for you know, a couple of years at this FM seminar, and you know, people like Howard Massey and Bo Tomlin, and you know, Dr. Sandroff, and you know, one day somebody said, "Well, Mr. Chowning, Dr. Chowning, when are we going to have more than 6 operators in an FM system?" And Dr. Chowning said, "Well, as soon as I figure out how much 2 oscillators are capable of, maybe we can talk about more." Because he was really working on that just simple modulator carrier relationship. And with envelope controls and feedback, you can go, you know, you can create almost unworldly sounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, the GS1 polyphonic aftertouch and 8 algorithms.
Avery is very kindly going to crawl around and try and get us to listen to this, because I personally have never heard one of these synthesizers, ever.
There it goes.
Oh, yeah, we got some.
Here we go. So, simple envelope, you know. So then we go to a more of a classic FM kind of sound. Right? This button right here is called touch response. And this is my favorite aspect of the GS1 sound. Because when you play it, you can play it like a piano. And then that polyphonic aftertouch, that swell, that expression that where you can bring out the notes within the chord and they swell up.
That
and
sounds beautiful.
It's just a marvelous sensation for the player to have that kind of expressive control over the sound. And this was the first time we'd ever done that in the GS1 in 1981.
There must have been a moment when that was first played, everybody in the office or the lab must have
Yes.
gone,
Oh my God, you know, and I listen to people like, there's a Robin Ford album where Russell Ferrante is just playing this on, it's the only keyboard on the record, and he's using these kinds of expressions on it.
So these presets were all fixed, you couldn't edit them, they were just
Oh
whatever
yes,
came.
we have a card reader, and there's magnetic strips that I had some around here. I wish I could.
How did they get programmed though? They presumably were they programmed from?
Well, there's basically a programming system that kind of looks like a little mainframe computer,
Right.
where they write those strips, those magnetic strips, and this you stick them in here, and it reads it, and it programs one of the 16 presets.
Ah.
This one is tricked out in that it has a bank select. I think you've got 8 banks of 16, and this also has a MIDI, a retrofit MIDI kit. So this one's been pretty tricked out. We believe this came from Jerry Goldsmith back in the day when that he was using it with his movie soundtracks and
Right.
things like that. So
Beautiful.
we moved from there, the GS1, of course, in 1983, the mothership of DX synthesizers came out with the DX1. And basically what this is 2 16-note systems. And so you have dual and split voices. You got bank A and bank B. Each one of those is basically a DX7.
This is my favorite looking synthesizer, digital synthesizer of all time. It just looks like it should be on some kind of spaceship console.
Yes.
But I love the look of this one.
And so what you're seeing here, these are the 32 algorithms for the 6 operator FM system. and so you can see that you know this last one, all 6 are characters, are carriers. This one has one modulator for that character, the rest, and then it gets really complicated up here where you got stacks of 3, and then the little loops around that are feedback loops. So when you change sounds, this is the representation of the algorithm itself. You can see how it changes. And this is a graphic representation of the actual algorithm used from,
it's like Predator.
From that list. Yes, kind of does. I see what you mean. You know, it kind of reminds me of that joke. You know, there are only 10 kinds of people in the world, right?
Right.
Those that understand binary and those that don't. So we got kind of a hexadecimal binary kind of thing going on here. See, this is your feedback algorithm number 17 with the feedback level.
It actually looks like it's much easier to program than a regular DX7, just purely because you've got more real estate and more.
Well, you know, on the DX7, you see you've got the silk screen of the envelope and the scaling here. This shows you the value of the envelope and the scaling and all of those kinds of things.
Oh, it makes a noise, this guy.
Oh yeah.
Classic.
So you have the ability to go in and choose a single voice, like
the marimba.
and then you've got a dual voice where you've got two voices layered. You can split it. So you've got all of that going on with the DX1.
I suppose were the DX patches compatible with this? So because I know
Yes.
I used to collect DX, as many system dubs.
This
I have
is-
thousands and thousands of them. So
This
when
is-
I get my DX1, I'll be able to load them in, right?
The original 6 operator voices from the original DX will go right in here. Be a SysX bulk dump.
How many of these were made? They can't have been many.
You know, I'm thinking somewhere around 150.
Just of the DX1. DX7, of course, a very different story, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the DX7 was the one that just must have really boosted Yamaha's fortunes at that time.
That hit the volume zone, you know, and we, you know, where there was a common saying where we really didn't need anything but a vending machine to sell DX7s, because the sales pitch was next.
Yeah. So I've heard different amounts of what the estimated amount of DX7s that were sold. Have you got a kind of?
It was about 250,000.
Right. That's.
Between 200, 250, somewhere.
It's interesting.
In there.
That really puts in perspective the size of our market as well, isn't it? I mean, because in terms of the numbers of Nintendos you sell, it's a very small number, but something of that value that's a lot of instruments to sell, isn't it?
Yes, and that was quite enlightening at one point when I realized that Baskin-Robbins sells in 1 year more vanilla ice cream, let alone the other 31 flavors, than the entire music industry makes. Okay, so we're just a small little industry, but these things mean so much to so many musicians, And just before we move on, this is the 1987 Centennial DX7.
That's totally blinged out, isn't it?
Well, it's 76 keys. They glow in the dark. These are gold, and it's just a tricked out in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of Yamaha making musical instruments.
Original price in 1987, $3,500.
$3,500. There were only 300 of them made.
Mind you, original price of the DX1 down there, nearly 11 grand.
$10,995.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay, so now we'll move on to
the VLs.
We're getting into the virtual acoustic systems of the first commercially available physical modeling synthesizers.
Physical modeling is, a lot of people think it's a new thing, but these guys, we're talking 1993, I know, yeah.
Right.
So it's, and this is hardware as
And
well.
and you know, the quickest way that I've developed in explaining this is this instrument is to a blown pipe as a flight simulator is to an airplane.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the flight simulator has been programmed to respond to the laws of physics. Lift, thrust, drag, you know, and it has the controls that make those things operate in the virtual world just as if it were an airplane. This has the components of basically a saxophone where you have the reed and the mouthpiece, which we call a driver. Then you have the throat, and then you have the pipe, which has a diameter, a length, and all
So
of those.
these are the elements that are being modelled.
We're talking about the VL1 now. It's it's two systems, so it can play two notes. The VL7 was the one system, but you know when people say, "Well, the VL1, when are you going to come out with a polyphonic VL1?" Well, that's like asking someone, "When are you going to have a polyphonic saxophone?"
Right.
If you understand the physics, the concept, you understand that it can only make one note at a time because of the blown pipe.
Right.
And
So you need an infinitely larger amount of DSP and processing to increase the polyphony when you're considering the time that these were made, right?
Right. If you just, like if you need polyphonic saxophone sounds, you just hire a bunch of sax players. The big band sax section is 5 saxes. That's the way you get 5 notes of saxophone. This is the same idea.
Right.
And it was very responsive to breath control. But the physical modeling algorithms that were developed were made possible by the waveguide theory developed by Dr. Julius Smith at Stanford University. He figured out a waveguide equation that reduced the math that it's required to model that blown pipe phenomenon by 90%.
So that made these things possible?
That made this possible. Now this is called the constant excitation model, which means that it requires constant input in order all the air through a pipe.
Right, gotcha.
Right? The VP, on the other hand, is a forced excitation model, which means it recreates the phenomenon of a struck membrane or a hammered string, and it does it 16 times because it's 16 note polyphony.
Wow. Not playing.
Quick reboot. You know, these things have been on the floor for 2 days, and who knows what.
I'm really loving. They're rocking the wood look as well. This was a really unique.
This is burled walnut.
It is actually wood.
It is actually burled walnut, and it's the same wood that the Toyota company buys from Yamaha for the Lexus automobiles panel.
Right.
Because I don't.
Oh, maybe a volume pedal.
Those are the.
Oh, that one's playing. Woo.
Okay, well, we'll go here, then I think I can make some noise up here. This really requires a breath controller to do what it does best, and it's just not practical to have a breath controller. When you're doing the physical modeling design of the tone generator, because of all the parameters that have to be modeled or described by the model in their function, there are a lot of parameters that can go outside of the normal range of physics that you can do. Like you can make a 100-foot saxophone.
Right, yeah.
Right? And the same thing goes with the membranes or the bowed and struck strings of the VP. So when we call up a sound on here and we play something like this, and we use some of the controllers, and then we do.
That's awesome, man. And this thing, right, is super rare, though, this one, isn't it?
I think there were less than a dozen made, and only 3 of them actually left the company and were sold.
Wow.
And this is one of those 3.
So these must be kind of proud. And you get to touch it as well. I've touched it. No, it says, even though it says "do not touch," I'm going to.
This is at the request of the.
This
is at the request of the person who loaned it to us. Yeah. In 1994, the price was $29,995.
So very rarefied.
Very, and hence, there wasn't a large market for it.
So I mean, just the R&D that must have gone into making it. I mean, do you think a lot of this come off the back of the revenue, I guess, that the DX7 must have generated?
Well, in a lot of ways it did. In a lot of ways, it was the culture that was developed due to the success of the DX7 created a lot of think tank kind of R&D that was made possible, that made this possible. And Toshi Kunamoto is the primary designer and led the design team, and he's known today as Dr. K, the developer of our VCM effects that are now in our high-end mixing consoles. The whole relationship we have with Rupert Neve, developing all those Portico and equalizers and those processors that Rupert does. Rupert has endorsed Dr. K's virtual circuit modeling that is still a legacy of this development going back to the early 90s. So.
Avery, that's been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much for showing us around. It's a real treat.
It's a little bit nuts at the NAMM show, and we've taken a chance by putting these out here, and who knows who's been doing what to it. I'm sorry they all didn't play. I had them playing when we set up.
I'm glad there's no coffee rings on the GS1 anyway, that's the main thing.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.